Hi, and welcome to Stimming and Stilettos with Dr. Tasha. And of course, another great guest. And I'm really happy to bring you guys Leah Murphy. She is a woman of color in STEM, but she has a phenomenal other career that we're also going to talk about. So here's the thing, you guys. You guys know that as a person who has had a STEM career, that just sort of means that we are versatile. That just means that we can branch off and do all sorts of other things. Um, but I really do want you, first off, let me just introduce you and say hi. Hi, Leah. How are you? I didn't even introduce
Hi,
you.
Dr. Natasha. How are you?
I just want to branch off and start
Oh,
the
good. I
story.
know how it feels. I know how
And
it feels.
I mean, because I feel like we've done this before because I've been on your podcast, and so we've sort of talked through this before. Um, and because we've done a few things together now, so
Mm.
we're at least familiar with each other. But first, I really do want to say thank you. I do not take it lightly that you agreed to come on my show. I don't know. I still get surprised when people say yes. So I don't take it lightly. So thank you, thank you, thank you for agreeing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm excited to be here. It's my pleasure. I'm gonna move. I'm gonna get my black girl braids out of the way of the microphone. I always forget when I clip my microphone. I gotta make that adjustment. I'm excited to be here. I love the title of your podcast, Stimmy and Stilettos. I was like, oh, this is very apropos, right? Considering the audience. So I love that. And I'm really excited just to be able to have discussions that are targeted to people that I don't feel like often get spoke to directly. Because there's so few people. When I think about Black women in careers in STEM, there's so few in the mass, but as a community, we know that it's rich. So I'm excited to be able to contribute to that and to your previous guests.
Mm. Well, thank you. I mean, listen, it's all about celebrating us. And you're right, we don't necessarily get the opportunity to talk about ourselves, tell our stories. And that's the one thing we should do, is talk about ourselves, tell our stories for that next generation. And I made a promise to myself a long time ago that um, I would do something to be the voice that I didn't get to hear when I was practicing. Because there were so many times where I wanted to be able to talk to somebody else, and there was nobody. I was like, where are
I
we?
understand.
Where are we? So and so here I am providing a an audience for us to be seen and heard. And so here we are. And here you are. So thank you.
You are welcome. And I think that that's kind of what all of us are trying to do in our own individual way is what was missing in the environment when I came up through the ranks and to define that thing for what was missing and be really clear on it. And then to say, if there's a way I can contribute and fill that gap, then I will, right? I'll
Yeah,
do that. Um, and knowing that somebody else will not have the exact same struggle. Now we're all going to have our own challenges,
yeah,
but knowing that they won't have the exact same struggle that we will, or that you provided something to fill in the gap, it definitely helps me sleep at night.
absolutely. Okay, so as we do with every single show, Leah, please tell us your STEM story.
Yeah. So I am a mechanical engineer by trade. So by education, I spent, and I know you are too. So shout out to the Meckies. I started in engineering really because I was one of those students that was good in math and science. So, my high school really encouraged me to study engineering. And I come from a very blue collar family, very union environment, folks who have worked as nurses, transportation authority, and different parts of that environment. So I actually started working while I was in college and really came to really enjoy the challenge of problem solving. And essentially, that's what I believe engineering is. It's the introduction to how to critically think and to problem solve. So I did that in undergrad, had a great experience learning, not necessarily a great experience in all of the classrooms. I was the only Black woman to graduate my year in mechanical engineering. And that meant that I spent a lot of times in rooms with my peers who were my age, but then there were a lot of older students who were also in the program at the time for me. And that caused me to constantly have to figure out, where do I fit, right? When
Yeah.
it came to the classroom environment, where will I be able to find a group? And there was a lot of times, I would say early on, sophomore, junior year, where I didn't get chosen for team projects.
Mm.
And I would have to, my team project would be whoever wasn't in class that day, right? Or that would be my team. And the professors knew, right? They saw it happening, but what were they going to do? So that made my college experience kind of tough. I had a really positive experience as far as learning and being introduced to a lot of things, but the social connection with peers in my major was very hard for me. And then eventually, God saw fit to send me a bunch of transfer students from other institutions that came into my university. And I found my group. I found my community. I found my friends. We were able to bond and we were able to study together. We were able to collaborate. We were able to be on project teams together. So then that built my confidence. I graduated from undergrad and had multiple job offers when I left school. So it gave me this kind of wide open range of, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And I chose to go into consumer goods, consumer manufacturing goods, strictly into food manufacturing right out of school. And that was because they companies at that time, now this is I'm dating myself, would do all this work to have these rotational development programs. And the rotational development program path for me meant you didn't have to stay in a job that you weren't sure you were going to love, but it also gave you a chance to go through a number of different departments and get broader exposure. So I chose a company that had a rotational program in engineering, in systems engineering, reliability engineering, and then I did operations, which was eye-opening. so that was my STEM story, how I transitioned. And I then, after that rotational program, I spent the next 12 years working in progressive responsibilities in manufacturing. I worked in factories for the early part of my career, like
Yeah.
literally hard hat,
Yeah.
steel toe boots, hairnet, all of the things. I
Yeah.
did that. And then after that, I started leading projects and leading teams in that group and doing capital project engineering. And that capital project engineering is where I really saw the money resided,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the amount of money companies were willing to invest in order to be able to grow or innovate or scale. And I'm like, oh, okay. So anytime somebody tells me we don't have no money, I'm gonna look this way. Like I'm gonna look at my spreadsheet and say, like, we had to throw away this much money on just,
Correct.
on just testing.
Right.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
so I learned a lot, had a great experience. I learned a lot. And I, as a nerd, as a self-proclaimed nerd and a self-proclaimed weirdo, to be able to get paid to do things that felt interesting and solve problems was exciting, but I also felt like it was pigeonholing.
Mm.
So once in the organization I was in, once you become an engineer, people only see you as just an engineer. So, and I'm doing air quotes for you guys who are listening to us, because I felt like career wise, it was, you can go down this very narrow path and you want to be a principal engineer and you want to be the subject matter expert, or there was kind of this, maybe you want to go into management and lead other engineers. So I intentionally made a pivot away from engineering and went into procurement, which is sourcing business operations. And I did that because I felt like it gave me some more options to leverage my engineering background that then transitioned me into more business facing opportunities so that I had broader, more career path options. So that was how I got into it and also how I transitioned out of it. So we can talk more about any parts of that, or, we'll get into where I am today.
Well, I think, but see, I think the lovely thing about engineering is that engineering teaches you how to think, right? It is a way of thinking, right? And it teaches you how to problem solve, which is applicable everywhere. And so
Mm-hmm.
you sort of using that, sort of plugging yourself or taking yourself out of the engineering world and sort of plugging yourself into procurement or, and then to what you're doing now is like such a thing that an engineer would do would be like, well, I've done that. Okay. I can take my
Time
skill
to
and
pivot. Yeah.
and I can do it and I can do what I do, because it's just that thought. Like I can take these skills that I know and I can apply it other places. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing that I've done for myself. Of course, engineer here, pivoted into a whole different arena, like, pivot away from engineering into teaching. And then people are like, what? Why? And it's like, well, I saw a problem. I thought I could solve it through education. So I took my skills to teaching. Leah took her skills to procurement and to some other places.
Yeah.
And because that is the way we think, we know how to problem solve, we know to take what we know and we can apply it in different areas. It doesn't look the same, it doesn't feel the same, but we know that the
Yeah.
principles of problem solving are the same. And so it's just
But I
how
think,
you apply them,
oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think your point about problem solving is kind of the foundation, right? That's like the bottom of the pyramid. You
Hmm.
believe you can problem solve, you see problems somewhere else, so then you can apply the same lens. And I really do believe that fundamentally. I also think for me, I don't know if this is the case for you, engineering requires a fair amount of risk assessment all the time, right? So you're like, okay, can we do this? How do I go about it? It's never been done before, but I'm going to create something that didn't exist.
Yep.
So for me, when I think about careers, even now, you have to assess the risk of making a pivot, making that shift. And I
Yep.
never saw myself as, okay, this is gonna, if this ends up horribly, I'll be stuck. I always knew that if I decided I could go back, right? If that was where I was interested in.
That's
So I
true.
was much more willing to take the risk and say, well, let me try something else out as opposed to never trying and never seeing what was on the other side.
Yep.
So that's something that I constantly challenge people with is risk aversion what's really holding you back from making a pivot. And now, as a career coach, I've spent the last 6 or so years working directly with executives who work in large organizations who are trying to figure out, how do I lead? What's my new leadership style? How do I define myself? How do I show up well in this environment? And also people who are trying to make a pivot, saw the work that I did or saw examples of others, and they're trying to figure out, how do I use these transferable skills in order to grow my career in a really intentional way. So I think my story is just an example of me kind of stepping back, assessing the risk, and deciding it's worth taking the chance. And there's a lot out there. And once you figure out that there's a lot out there, then you realize there's a lot of opportunity as well as risk. So I saw that more as opportunity and less as risk, especially when I was in the place of not wanting to work in manufacturing factories anymore. It was
Right.
like I have to do something else and make a pivot because I had
Right.
a lifestyle adjustment that I also needed to make personally.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think, especially I think we assess risk differently than other people because risk comes along with the job, right? As an engineer, you assess risk differently, right? Because it's a part of the job.
Yeah. And it can never be 100% avoided, right? Like, I think
Correct.
that's the other part. You
Right.
never fully 100% avoid risk. You must decide how much you're willing to tolerate considering your known. So I could go nerd, we could nerd out on this. So I don't,
I
I don't
know,
want to make that
I know
too,
the people are like, okay, and let's
what are
start
y'all
this
talking about?
off.
No,
Right.
but I want to bring it back for folks. So if you're thinking about, you have a foundation in a particular field and you're trying to figure out, can I do something else? Maybe I've outgrown this or I'm looking for a new experience. I think about encouraging folks to say, look at the adjacencies to the work you're already doing, right?
Mhm.
So you're in engineering, for example, look at what's happening in research and development potentially and see if there's an opportunity there. In engineering, we collaborated with procurement all the time because we had to buy multi-million dollar pieces of equipment. So I'm like, I speak your language, you speak mine. Can we figure out how to create an opportunity where both of us can grow from this? Yeah.
Right.
You talk about working directly with supply chain, right? Or working directly with your operations team. So think about the adjacencies because adjacencies are where new opportunities live. There is some risk, but it gives you a chance to be able to grow and you can absolutely 100% leverage your transferable skills as opposed to starting from scratch and starting from the bottom in that new part of the organization. So as a coach, I really try to encourage folks to use that as leverage to move them somewhere else.
Right. And you also have to think about like your own personal level of growth, right? And I guess you can assess that in terms of risk also. It's like, where do you want to grow? Like what level of where are you on that growth scale? Like, what are your interests? Where is it that you want to where do you want to grow? And then sort of like what level, so because some people, are you growing this way or do you sort of want to grow, you know, off this way? And so maybe there's that
Right. Is it
interest.
vertical or is it
Yeah.
lateral?
Yeah. So it could be that you've always had that interest in X, or Z or L. And it, so for other people, it might seem strange, but for you, you're like, no, no, this seems right for me, right? There's a settling that happens in your gut that's like, okay, yeah, this is the next move for me. And you are the only person that it has to be right for. It does not have to be right for anybody else. And that
Yeah.
is that is the right move. And so it only has to be right for you. So
I
that,
agree with that. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
the self-awareness part of you knowing what you want, right, is the part that I think a lot of us miss the opportunity to take time to understand. What do you want? Where do you want to see yourself grow? And what are you willing to trade, right? Normally trading the comfort and safety of doing what you know and doing it in your sleep for taking something that's a little bit more challenging, but it pays you in a different way.
yeah,
It grows you in a different way, I should say. So
yeah.
I
Well,
love that you brought it up. Just like, what do I want? Because I
yeah.
think that's where we can do better.
So when you made the pivot to go in from leaving, I want to say corporate, to go into what you're doing now, like how was it hard? Or is that one of those moves where you just said, you know what, this is it's time? Because I feel like that's a
Yeah.
cool thing.
Um,
Like at some point, you'd probably been doing it, or it was this thing that kept happening to you where you're just like, you know what, this is what I was supposed to be doing. And if you're like, if it was like what had been happening for me, it was the thing that I was just sort of volunteering my time, and people would be like, hey Tasha, can you write up this activity for me? I was doing it in my sorority. I have been doing it for years, and I'm like writing up these activities, or I'm doing these things on Saturdays. I'm volunteering my time, and they're like, "Oh, these events are so great," and I'm like, "I'm could be making money doing these things," and people would be like, "Yeah, you could, but in the meanwhile, could you?" I'm like, you know,
yeah, I do. I understand. So I had what would have been considered a really great experience in corporate for the majority of time that I was there.
Hmm,
And then 2020 happened, the world shuts down, we're operating in a pandemic, we're seeing racial reckoning happening on our news feed and on our cell phone and social media. So I actually took a step back from corporate at that time, took a leave of absence for my overall well-being, right? So I'm like, listen, there's a lot that's happening, and the expectations from the corporation were not getting any lighter, right? It was as though companies thought that all the things that were happening outside of work we could ignore and pretend weren't happening. And because they believed that, the work kept coming, the effort didn't get any lower. So what I tried to decide to do in that realm was like, I got to make the right call for me. I'm getting all kinds of stuff happening, which it never happens, but um, so forgive me. I had to make the right call for me. So I took a step back, took a leave of absence from work, and taking that leave of absence really allowed me a perspective. I call it my sabbatical. I love that teachers get a sabbatical, and I wanted one for myself. I had worked for years and years and years, and in taking that sabbatical allowed me to reassess and decide what was right for me, right? What was going to be right for me, for my household, for my family more broadly, but ultimately, how do I protect my well being as I continue to navigate these spaces?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And what I learned from that leave of absence was there's more that I believe that I can accomplish, and I don't know that I can accomplish it all within an organization. Um, but I also was like, okay, but how am I going to get paid? Right? Like, how am I going to get paid? What do I do as far as forming a business? Now, I have been coaching clients and I have been having phenomenal experiences. I have some of, obviously I'm biased, some of the best clients on my one-on-one coaching side. And that
Yeah.
was happening through referral, where, the work was good. People were getting the results that they were looking for. They were feeling supported. The majority of my clients um, are diverse people, mostly women, who are looking for someone who understands their lived experience, but can also help to coach them to the levels of success and career that they desire. So they would come to me organically that way. And eventually, I was so invested in seeing them be successful and continuing to do the work that I was like, all right, if there's a way for me to be able to monetize and build this into a business, let me explore that. And upon exploration, and I did all the, I applied my engineering problem solving to it. I got my proof of concept together, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So I like to say that I had a bridge out of corporate. I was already working for myself on kind of a side hustle basis. I had a foundation of clients that were already um, just so gratifying. The work was so fulfilling that when it came time for me to make a decision as to whether or not corporate was the right fit for me, that bridge took me there easily. And I was working in a company that was laying people off and doing all kinds of restructuring. So I was fortunate enough to be able to say, I'll take my package and then I'll work full time for myself. So I've been doing that ever since.
Love that. I I just love that so much. I can't even tell you how much I love that for you, but I also love that for your clients. Because there's first off, there's nothing like A, working for yourself, but B, sort of being able to step full time into what has turned out to be like what it is you're supposed to be doing and stepping into your purpose. I can't tell you how much I love that. I just love that. just
Thank
it just
you.
makes me
Now
so happy.
I want to make sure that I want to make sure that I'm honest. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone.
Oh no, it's not.
Entrepreneurship requires a different type of skill
Mhm.
than you showing up in a corporate environment that is very resource heavy and has all of the reputation and relationships and all of that, all of those things. I hate when people glamorize entrepreneurship like, oh, it's just perfect, it's amazing, I'm just my own boss. I'm my own boss. I'm also my own a lot of other things. And
Right.
I have to be committed to being a real self-starter, to being self-motivated, to also being able to do sales, as well as be a great coach, as well as develop business plans. Like those are the things that I have to do as a leader for my organization. Um, so it's not easy.
No, it's
Entrepreneurship
hard
is
work.
not the right, it's not the end all be all. And there's no problem, no shade at all to people who choose to keep their 9 to 5 and do something on the side, or keep their 9 to 5 altogether because it's a better fit for them and their risk profile or where they are in their life, or they're working for an organization that they feel good about. So I think I like to just make sure that people understand, I believe both can be good. It depends on what you need and what you're looking for in your career. And for me, at this stage of my career, entrepreneurship is definitely what's best for me.
Sorry, this is my dog. um,
Understood.
there's somebody coming in here. Hold on. So I agree wholeheartedly that entrepreneurship is not for everybody, and you have to choose the path that is for you. And you got to know that some people try it and it's like, and yeah, you know, and there's no harm, no foul. Like if you decide like it's not for you, then okay, it is what it is. It is what it is. So, but I do think that it looks good on you though. I will say that it
Thank
does
you. Well,
it does look good
well,
on
thank
you.
you. And the same to you.
Listen, I mean, and I will say it is hard, but I don't regret it. I think it's one of the best decisions of my life. Um, working as a as a as an entrepreneur has kind of freed me. And there's a what I like most about it is being able to be free of somebody telling me what to do all the time, and being my own boss, and being able to say,
Mm,
okay, today I will do this. This is
yeah.
most important to me today. This is what I will
But
accomplish.
you
So,
you said it, like you encapsulated it in one sentence, and I don't even know if you realize it for me, right? Because you dropped the gem. It is hard, but I don't regret it.
yeah.
Like that really encapsulates the whole experience. It
Yeah.
is hard, but I don't regret it. Because there's no statement that could be truer. And it doesn't mean that all hard things are worth pursuing,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't mean that everything that's easy is worth having, right? It kind of gives you all the flexibility to say it's hard, it's difficult, it's also gratifying and rewarding. I don't regret it at all, but it's not for everybody.
It is
So thank you for that. You can make that the title of the episode. It's hard,
it is
but I
hard,
don't
but I don't
regret
regret
it.
it. And maybe
But I
that
don't regret
that'll
it.
be what it is. I mean, because at the end of the day, and my husband likes to say, at the edge of night. Um,
Right.
uh,
Oh, I like that. That feels very poetic.
um, I just think you can't regret anything that is in your life that has led you to this moment, right? Even the good, the bad, and the ugly of it has led you to this moment. It led you to this decision, because it all led you here, right? When you were telling your story about being in the classroom where you were the first and the only, right? You were the one who you got assigned to the group where the students weren't there, right? I could so relate because that was my story. Being, you walk in the classroom and you'd be like, you do that look, and I call it the look, and it's not the look everybody's talking about. You look in the classroom and you'd be like, I am I'm either the only girl in here, I'm dang sure the only Black person or only person of color in here, or I am the only Black girl in here, or I'm the only Black person in here, right? That is the look you, especially if you went to if you went to PWI, you had that feeling in at least one of your classrooms, so you knew what that experience was going to be in the classroom, and especially if your professor was not a person of color, right? You already knew what that experience was going to be like. And so I felt you so much, on that. Um, and actually, um, Leah and I are a part of an anthology project, called, Triumph in the Trenches. And my chapter is, called Even with My Mouth Closed, I Still Speak, where I talk about going into classrooms and my very presence being how I spoke, right? Me walking into classrooms and them basically my personhood being in the problem, right? I haven't said a word and people have already determined things about me, right? I haven't said a word. You don't know a thing about me, but my very presence being in that classroom said a lot, right? You made assumptions about who I was, why I was there, what I was doing there. And so, um, and what that meant. And so that was what my chapter was about, and how I chose to use, my voice later, my actual voice later, um, because of those experiences. And so, and where I talk about why this podcast exists, and why I mentor girls, and why I mentor and coach young women in STEM, and like what it all means to me, um, because of those experiences. And so, um, it just it had a profound impact on me. And my work experiences, I could just go on and on and on, but those that there's a reason why I called why the name of my chapter is Even with My Mouth Closed, I Still Speak. Because our personhood still matters to people. Um, and I mean, it still matters to people what we look like, and when we arrive places, it still matters. And so
Yeah.
that is a thing. What was the name of your chapter, and what did you talk about in your chapter?
Yeah, so for Triumph in the Trenches, Navigating Success for Black Professionals, it was like the title of that anthology really pushed all of the buttons for me,
Man.
because navigating success for Black professionals, I have been on this very much redefining what success is, right?
Mm,
And I think we all need a reminder that we have permission to redefine success for ourselves. So my chapter was focusing on the game is rigged, career accelerators, and derailers. So my intent there was, corporate America oftentimes is there are rules that are required for us to participate in corporate America. And there's a set of rules that they tell everybody, and then there's some rules that they never tell you.
mm,
And it's only through either lived experience, trial and error, great mentorship, great sponsorship, great advisors that you learn that there are a different set of rules for Black professionals often.
yeah.
And when those rules are illuminated to you, then you have a fighting chance to be able to be successful in those environments. But often, ultimately, do you feel like it's really your responsibility to try to rewrite the rules? No, you either choose you the sooner you can get a good understanding of what the rules and what the requirements of you are, then you decide if you want to participate.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to illuminate for folks, the game is rigged. The sooner you can get the heads up on where the rigged parts are and get a real perspective from someone who has been there on what the rules are, or you can get the real acknowledgement of your experience, that you're not alone in your experience, and receiving, like, why didn't I get that promotion? Why am I seeing my peers get opportunities that I never get tapped on the shoulder for? And it's because the game is rigged. And the sooner we know that, the more we can actually make a conscious decision for where to invest and where to maintain ourselves, where to protect our energy, where to protect our well being, because the game is rigged. So that's why I wanted to make sure I wrote the chapter on that topic. And just the redefining success is something I'm really passionate about with my clients and in all other forms of my work and business. So that title compelled me to want to contribute in that way. So I'm excited for it. We've been working on it behind the scenes quietly for a long time. Feels like it's a long time coming. So when the book actually does come out, please do go and purchase the book. Natasha and I are both doing work to be able to promote that book, and we do believe that it has the potential to change your perspective as a Black professional, because we are giving you our lived experience so that in a concentrated form, so that you can then go apply it to your own career. And we hope that it benefits some people who are trying to transform in a significant way.
Absolutely, because it's not just about, I always tell people it's like, it's not, it's called Triumph in the Trenches for a reason. So it's not just these like horror stories about things that happened to us when we were in corporate America.
Exactly.
It is those stories, but how we overcame those stories and what we're doing now, right? So it's not just a like, oh, woe is me, these things happened to us. It is, hey, these things happen. Here are the things that we learned from them, and this is what we're doing now, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it is these are triumphant stories, right? These are triumphant stories. So take the lessons that we've learned. So we've learned them so you don't have to, right? So you don't have to go through these things. So these are 20 plus stories of things that these professionals, these wonderful professionals have learned. Take them, read them, learn the lessons that we are giving you. Make a checklist and be like, oh, he went through that. Oh, check. I don't have to do it. Leah did that.
Yeah.
Okay, check. Oh, and she's saying the game is rigged, and this is how I overcome it. Okay, so I can take this into my workplace. I can look for these things. Okay, Natasha had went through, she's in STEM and she went through these things. I can look for these things and I can do, I have at the end of my chapter, I actually give you a call to action. So these are things that you can do because I believe in a good call to action. It's not just a matter of,
Right.
hey, these are wonderful things, but no, there's things that we can do together, right? There's a book list
Yeah.
at the end because again, there's work that we need to do together. So there's things for you to do as the reader. And so there's
I
mentorship,
love that.
all the things that you can like listen, like this is not just it's not just a good read, but there are things that we can do together. So yeah, there's like I said, there's things that we can do together. Triumph in
Yeah.
the
So get a copy for
trenches.
yourself, gift a copy.
Yep. Pick up
I'm
your
sorry, I was
copy.
just saying,
Yep.
get a copy for yourself, gift a copy to a young professional or someone who is tenure in their career. It applies. And I think that's the best part about having an anthology and having this many different perspectives from a wide range of very accomplished, very successful people. There's something for everyone in it. So I really want to encourage folks to make the make the effort to get it and
And
consume it.
and consume it. That's it. Okay, so I have two questions. So if people are looking for you, Leah, where can they find you?
Yeah. So I'm Leah C. Murphy on LinkedIn. That's where I spend the majority of my time. I do a LinkedIn Live every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is where I drop gems. My company is Career Gems for the Journey. I drop gems on LinkedIn consistently every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or you can head over to my website at gemsforthejourney.org. That's gemsforthejourney.org, and you'll be able to find tremendous amounts of research, blog posts. You'll be able to get a copy of the books. You'll be able to find the podcast. Natasha mentioned earlier, we have the Career Gems for the Journey podcast. So you can find me on LinkedIn or you can find me directly on my own website. Thanks so much for asking.
Awesome. And okay, so this information, of course, will be where good people in the show notes. So guess what? You guys need to read the show notes. I know I talk about the show notes a lot, but again, they will be in the show notes. So you got to read the show notes. Okay, just saying. I talk about the show notes a lot.
I got that.
I need people to, read the show notes. Okay. Um, just saying, just need people to read the show notes. I'll just say it again because I need people to read the show notes. Yeah. Okay.
I
All
think
right.
they got it. I think they got it. I think they got it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. So one last question. And this is the question that we end the show on. If you could travel back through time and talk to young Leah, what advice would you give her and why?
So for young Leah, I would say embrace your inner weirdo. And I mentioned this at the top of the podcast because I consider weirdo to be a compliment. I consider weird to be something that is interesting, something that is unique, something that is different in a positive way. So I think has a real negative connotation a lot. But as you know, a self-proclaimed nerd, I think if I would have embraced my inner weirdo sooner and been able to live in my authenticity as my 20 to 30-year-old self, I think there's a lot of opportunity that I would have been able to avoid being so concerned about other people's expectations, and my authenticity would have attracted the right people to me sooner.
Mm,
So I think a lot of times we force young people to fit into a very narrow box, and that there's a limited way that you can be, that you can act, that you can show up, that you can communicate, limited things you can be interested in. So I think if you embrace your inner weirdo, it reminds me that individuality will never go out of style. So you being a unique, authentic version of yourself sends a signal to others to be the same. And then you get an opportunity of community with other really honest, authentic people that are attracted to the true you, not the version that you may feel like you had to manufacture or adjust to. So when you find your tribe of other weirdos, then you know that everybody is down for the cause. Individuality is never going out of style, and one candle can light many other candles without going out.
Oh,
So I love to just encourage people, embrace that about yourself, embrace your inner weirdo so that you can live authentically and show up in spaces exactly where you're supposed to be so the right opportunities and people can come to you.
oof. Oh, I feel like my chest hurt and you gave me chills in a good way. I love that
Good,
so, so
good.
much. I love that so, 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 so much. Okay, that is a great way to end this episode. So I am going to end this episode. Thank you so much for just dropping nuggets and gems all over the place in this episode. Um, I know that people are going to leave better for having listened in to this episode. So thank you again for just coming on. It was so good. It was so good. It was so good.
Good. I love that. I love that. Thank you for having me, Dr. Natasha. It's always great to be able to collaborate with another talented woman in STEM. And it reminds us that this idea that competition and that there can only be one is a false narrative because there's space for all of us to be great. And I want to see nothing but success and greatness for you. And I'm excited for your listeners to be able to have this experience.
Absolutely. Right back at you, sis. So anytime, anywhere, anytime, anywhere you need me, I'm there. Whatever, whenever, trust, I'm in. Okay.
Shout outs.
Okay, so you guys, as I say every single episode, you guys keep yourselves safe.